We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 77a. The Gemara is continuing with a statement from Abaye. Abaye says that everybody agrees. Let's say the husband says to his wife at night, when the sun comes out, then it will be a get, then it will be a gerushin. What he's saying to her is, when the sun actually comes out, at that point, it's going to be chal. And if he were to die during the night, have a get lachar misa. That would be giving a get after death, which of course is not going to be kosher. Rashi says, again, the point is, if he dies at night, it's not going to be a get. Also by our Mishnah like that, when he says, this is your get if I don't come after 12 months. So again, in such a situation, that's not going to be a kosher get, assuming he dies. You can't rely on the fact that there's a date on the get, because he's clearly saying, when I don't come, it's going to be a get. He's not saying from now, he's not saying retroactively. However, he continues, if he says that on the condition that the sun comes out, so in that situation, what he's saying is he's saying it's going to be chal from now, it's going to be retroactive. The Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, because Rav Huna said that Rav said, and some have the gears again of Rebbe, that Rav Huna said that Rebbe said, Kol ha'omer almanas, ka'omer me'achshav dami. Anyone who says almanas, it's as if he said me'achshav, and it's chal retroactively. And Abaye continues, Lo nechluku ela be'im teitze. The whole machlokus is in a situation where the person uses the language of im teitze. In that situation, there's a machlokus. Mar savar lo Rabbi Yossi do amar zmano shel shtar mochiach olav. One holds like Rabbi Yossi's opinion that the date on the shtar proves that it's really retroactive. V'havalei k'mehayom imamati, and it's similar to saying from mehayom, from today if I die. K'me'achshav imati, it's like saying from now if I die. And Mar lo savar Rabbi Yossi, and the other one does not hold like Rabbi Yossi. V'havalei k'imati, great, it's just like saying imati, it's not considered to be me'achshav. And Rashi explains, be'im teitze, again, the whole machlokas according to Abaye is if the language is if it comes out with a chavas, and what he's saying really is similarly in our case in our Mishnah. Im lo basi, again in our Mishnah, if he says if I don't come in 12 months, ve'amrinan la'el beperkin, we say early in the parak, gabe imati, im shtei lashonos mashma, we say the word im, it sounds like both directions. Mashma me'achshav u'mashma l'kashiyagi, it sounds like from now, meaning retroactive, and it sounds like when it actually happens, not retroactive. Amar mehayom have me'achshav, if he says mehayom, it means me'achshav. Lo amar mehayom, if he doesn't say mehayom, have l'kashiyagi, then it really means when it happens. That's why in the Mishnah, that's going on the Shita in the Mishnah, the Shita in the first Shita in the Mishnah says that if he says, if I don't come back within 12 months, and then he dies within the 12 months, it's not going to be chal, because it's going to be a problem of a get lachar misa. And what are the Rabboseinu, again, on the previous sum of the Rabboseinu argue, and they say it is a good get, hilkach Rabboseinu, savri lo Rabbi Yossi v'chulu. Therefore, the Rabboseinu, they hold like Rabbi Yossi, that zmano shel shtar mochiach olav, that's why it's as if he said mehayom, it's as if he said me'achshav, and therefore it's retroactive. And Rashi continues, ki immati greda, again, that's like immati, va'amrun la'el de la'achar miso, l'kasha amos, again, immati sounds like it's saying la'achar misa, that's how we understand it. It means l'kasha amos, when I die, and it's a problem of a get la'achar misa. And the same thing applies in our Mishnah of ha'chanami mashma, l'kasha lo'avo, la'achar shnei masar chodesh, when I don't come after 12 months. And again, if he dies within the 12 months, it's going to be a problem of a get li'achar misa. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Kisvu tenu get li'ishtim lo basi mikan ve'ad yud beis chodesh. Let's say he said, write and give a get to my wife if I don't return within 12 months. Kasvu v'chulu. So then it says if they wrote it within the 12 months, but they gave it after the 12 months. So that was a machlokas tanoim. The first tan of the Mishnah said it's not a good get. They were supposed to write it after the 12 months. And Rabbi Yossi said, because that get, it is considered to be a good get. Amar le Rav Yemer le Rav Ashi. Rav Yemer said to Rav Ashi, Leimo kasav Rabbi Yossi. Let us suggest that what Rabbi Yossi holds is, Kasav get al tanai kosher, that if he writes a get with a condition, it's kosher, meaning we're totally ignoring the condition. The Gemara right now is assuming that the explanation in Rabbi Yossi is, the person did make a condition, kisvu tenu get l'ishti, that you should specifically write it and give it after the 12 months, and they violated the condition by writing it within the 12 months. But Rabbi Yossi says the condition is meaningless. It doesn't make any difference. If you write a get al tanai, it's kosher. And according to what the Gemara is now suggesting, it doesn't matter how it was formulated. In any kind of formulation, it's going to be kosher according to Rabbi Yossi, because we essentially ignore the tanai. And that's what Rashi says, kasav get al tanai kosher v'afilu lo niskayim hatanai. It's kosher even if you didn't fulfill the tanai. Dahachu tziva lichtov la'achar yud beis chodesh, because he's saying to write it after 12 months. Ve'em kidmu v'chazvu machshir Rabbi Yossi, and they did it early, they wrote it early, and Rabbi Yossi says kosher. V'nei monami da reisha polig. In the reisha of the Mishnah, there was a slightly different formulation in terms of how he phrased it, but maybe Rabbi Yossi argues over there as well, because he completely ignores the condition. And the Gemara says, lo no, liola mei malach, really I'll say to you, pasul, it's pasul, meaning to say, if you write a get al tanai, you have to fulfill the tanai, according to Rabbi Yossi. V'shani hachan, it's different over here in this specific formulation, where he says, kisvu, tenu gel ishtim, lo basi mikan, v'ad yud beis chodesh, that's different. Because what he should have said, if he really wanted to write it specifically after the 12 months, what he should have said was, im lo basi kisvu tenu, if I don't come at that point in time, write it and give it. Then it would sound like you're writing it after the 12 months. V'yomar kisvu tenuim lo basi. Instead, what he said was, kisvu tenuim lo basi, write it and give it if I don't come. So if he says it in that way, hachi kamer Rabbi Yossi says, this is what he means to say, kisvu me'achshav, write it now, utenuim lo basi, and then give it if I don't come. V'rabbanan lo shna hachi v'lo shna hachi. And the Rabbanan, they say to Rabbi Yossi, they respond, it doesn't make a difference how it's formulated. What it always means is, it should be written after 12 months, and that's why the Rabbanan say, it's not going to be a kosher get if it's written within the 12 months. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, la'achar shavua. Let's say the person says that the get is going to be chal, as Rashi explains, la'achar shavua shana. The phrase over here is la'achar shavua shana. If he says after a Shemitah cycle, you have to wait a year. Again, in Rashi explains, Ze gitech im lo avo la'achar shavua zu Shemitah zu. Let's say he says, this is your get if I don't come after this Shemitah. Mamtinin lo shana shminis. You have to actually wait the whole 8th year as well in order for the get to be chal. D'chol shana shminis kruya achar shavua, because the 8th year is called after the Shemitah cycle. In other words, the phrase la'achar shavua really means after the 8th year, because it means to say you have to wait a whole year. That's la'achar shavua. That's considered the period after the Shemitah cycle. Similarly, la'achar shana, let's say it says it's after a year. Chodesh, then you have to wait a month after that year goes by. Same idea. La'achar chodesh, if he says after a month. Shabbos, you have to wait a week after that month goes by. La'achar Shabbos, what if he says after Shabbos? What's considered the period after Shabbos? Yosef Reb Zera Kamid Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Zera was sitting in front of Rav Asi. V'yamri lo Rabbi Asi Kamid Rabbi Yochanan. Some have the version it was Rabbi Asi sitting in front of Rabbi Yochanan. The Kamer said as follows: Chad b'Shabu treu tlasa basar shabsa. Essentially, the first day, the second day, the third day, meaning Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, those days are considered the period after Shabbos. That's the period after the previous Shabbos, so that would be considered after Shabbos. You have to wait until after the third day, after Tuesday. Arba v'chamshu mali Shabbos. Now, the fourth day, the fifth day, and Erev Shabbos, meaning Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Kame Shabbos. That's referred to the time period before the coming Shabbos already. Rashi says, Chad b'Shabba, Trei b'Shabba, Tlos b'Shabba, Kari basar Shabbos shavar. That's what's referred to as the days following the previous Shabbos. Avol Revi, Chamishi, Veshishi, Nikron al Shem, Shabbos haba. But Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's already called for the coming Shabbos. Kame Shabbos, High Shabbos, the Kamar Yom Shabbos, Mamish Kamar. Actually says Kame Shabbos means we're talking about the actual day of Shabbos. Those days are before the coming Shabbos. That's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday is after the previous Shabbos. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, La'achar haregel, let's say he says it should be chal after the regel, after the holiday, Shloshim Yom, the period after the holiday, you have to wait 30 days. Rashi says, La'achar haregel, Im lo avo la'achar haregel, meaning he's saying, let's say he says, if I don't come, if I don't return after the regel, Tzarech lahamtin lamed yom, you have to give him 30 days to return. 30 days is considered after the regel. And the Gemara says on this, Nafik Rabbi Chia went out, Darsha Mishmei the Rebbe, when he said this halacha in the name of Rebbe, V'kal Suah, they praised him. They were essentially saying that it's only a minority opinion. That's not the halacha. Mishmei the Rebbe, when he said the exact same halacha in the name of the public, in the name of the majority, V'lo Suah, they didn't praise him, because again, they said it's not in the name of the majority, that's a minority opinion. Alma les hilchasa kavasa. You say the halacha is not like what Rebbe said. We don't follow this halacha that la'achar haregel means shloshim yom. Rashi says, "V'kal suah yafa amrit." They said, "You're saying correctly." Devada yechida amra. It certainly was the opinion of a minority of one person. V'lo kal suah. When he said it in the name of the majority, they didn't praise the halacha. Lo hodulo. They did not admit to him. Shenem rami pi rabbin. They didn't admit that it was said by the majority. Misham delais hilchasa kavase, because the halacha doesn't follow that opinion. Hadron alach misha achazu. We will return to you parak misha achazu. This is the end of the 7th parak of Meseches Gitin. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And and take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the 8th parak of Meseches Gittin. The Mishnah says, Hazore get lishto. Let's say a person throws a get to his wife. V'hi besoch beisa, or besoch chatzeira, and she's within her house, or she's in her chatzer, harezu megureshes. In such a situation, that's considered a proper giving of a get, and she is divorced. Zarku la besoch beisa, or besoch chatzeiro. If he throws it to her within his house, or within his chatzer, afilu hu ima b'mita, even if he's with her in the bed, eino megureshes. In that situation, she is not going to be divorced. And the Mishnah continues, L'soch cheiko, l'soch kalsa, if he throws it into her lap or into her basket, harezim megureshes, in that case, she will be divorced. And Rashi explains, Hazore get, v'hi v'soch beisa, he throws a get and she's in her own house, meaning to say, shel nichse milug, this is the property that's called nichse milug, that she brought into the marriage that she owns, v'zarkula gabikarka, and he threw it to her on the land, on her property, harezim megureshes, so in that case she's divorced, to console chatzera, because the principle over here is that her chatzer, her courtyard, acquires it on her behalf, ki'ilu nasnu biyad, as if it was given in her hand. Kedim mefarish begemar, as the Gemara explains, l'soch cheiko, l'soch kalsa, harezim megureshes, if it's in her lap or in her basket, then she's divorced. Va'afilu hi b'soch beiso. In that case, it's a divorce, even if she's within his own house. V'taima mefarish begemar. The reason for that will be explained in the Gemara. Kalsa is a sal sha'anoshim nousnos l'socho machten v'tzinorios. Again, a kalsa is a basket that the women put small items within that basket. They use it for their items. And the Gemara says, Minohan immediately, from where do we know these words? The Tan Rabbanan, that the rabbis taught, V'nasan biyad, that says in the pasuk he has to put the get in her hand. Maybe it has to be dafka in her hand, only in her actual hand. And so the Brisa says, Ainli alayada, I only know it has to be put in her hand. Gaga chatzeira v'karfifa minayin. How do we know that it's also kosher if it's her roof, or it's her courtyard, or her enclosed area, her property? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, V'nasan, it says he gives it, mikol makom, in any fashion that he gives it to her, is also going to be considered a good gerushin. Rashi says, Talmud Lomer, V'nasan mikol makom v'darshina le'ban pei nafshi. In other words, we darshan the word v'nasan on its own without the biyada. Midelo ksiv uviyada yitnenu mashma lo nesina kaldu. Since the pasuk doesn't say uviyada yitnenu, it says v'nasan sounds like any kind of giving. V'yada, the cause of rachmana, debu'inan dumya diyada, when it says yada, it has to be similar to her hand, meaning to say the mishtameres l'dait, an area that's protected, it's under her control, kidem efarish l'kamei, as we'll explain later on. And the Gemara continues, v'tanya nami hachi gabe ganav, we have a similar brisa by the case of a ganav, by the case of a thief. Yado, it says that they find in his hand the geneva, they find the stolen item in his hand. Ainli ela yado, I only know that he's liable if it's found in his hand. Gago chatzero v'karfifo minayin, how do we know that he's liable if it's found on his roof or in his courtyard or in his enclosed area? Talmud Lomer, himotze timotze, the pasuk says himotze timotze, it's surely found by him. Mikol makom, in any way that it's found, he is liable. And the Gemara says with tzricha, we need both cases. Diyash minan get, because if we only taught this halacha by get, mishum debal karcha migrasha, because a woman is divorced against her will, that's why we include her roof and her chotzer and her enclosure. Avaganev delese bal karcha, but when it comes to a thief, a person's not liable if he steals something. He's coerced to steal something. If he steals something against his will, so aimalo. So I would say no. I would say we would not include all of these cases. Viyash minan ganev, and if we only taught the halacha by ganev, mishum dekanse rachmona, because a ganev, there's a fine that's imposed on a ganev in general. The ganev has to pay kefil, has to pay double for what he stole. We see that we're stricter with a ganev. Avol get emolo, but by a get I might say not like that. So it's richa. So that's why we need both cases. And the Gemara says chatzera. So how do we have a case of her chatzer? What does it mean that it's her chatzer? There's a rule, mashakansa isha konabala. Whatever the wife acquires is acquired by her husband. So she's not really acquiring it, even if it is her chatzer. And the Gemara says, Amar Rebbe Lazar says, B'kosev lo, we're talking about a specific situation where he writes for her, Dinu devarim ainli b'nechasayich, I have no authority over your property. But the Gemara says, V'chikasav lahachim, I have it. But even if he writes that, who cares? What does that help? Vatanya, but we learned in a brayso. So ha'omer l'chaveiro, if a person says to his friend, Dinu devarim ainli al sadazu, I don't have any cause to hold you liable on this particular field. Ve'enli esek ba, I have nothing to do with it. V'yadi mesulaka seimena, and I'm removing my hand from it. Lo amar klum, that statement is worth nothing. It doesn't mean anything. So how does that statement work over here by a husband and a wife? And the Gemara answers, Amri devei Rabbi Yanai, they said in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, Bekosev lo va'oda arusa. He's writing this to her while she's still in the state of Erison, she's still betrothed to him. Uchad Rav Kahana, like Rav Kahana says, Damar Rav Kahana, because Rav Kahana says, Na'achalo habolo la'adam imakam acher. if you have a nachla, an inheritance, so to speak, that comes to somebody from some other source, meaning it's not something he's inheriting from his fathers. So Adam masno la shelo yirshan, a person before it comes to him, before he's zocha in the property, he's allowed to make a condition that he's not going to inherit it. Uchid the Rav, and it's like Rava said, the Amar Rava, because Rava says, HaOmer, one who says. And Rashi explains, Kana Bala, don't we have a principle that whatever the wife acquires, the husband acquires la peiros, meaning the husband acquires it in terms of peiros, in terms of the usage, the fruits from that property, leshtamish but to use it, vakati lo nafaget miyadi de Baal. So the point is, even if the husband is putting it into her own chutzner, it really hasn't left the rishus, it hasn't left the authority of the husband. And the Gemara then answered the kasav law, again, he wrote to her that I have no authority in your property. Hashta mashma the kasav law kain la'achar shakon. So right now the Gemara thinks he's writing that to her after they're already married. That's why the Gemara asks that it's not possible to say that. As Rashi here continues, the Gemara said, "Al sadazu." Let's say a person writes to his friend, "I don't have any ownership. I have no stake in this particular field." Shahaisalo imov chutfis ba. They were partners in this particular field, and he's writing these languages. V'ein li'esek ba achas mikol lashonos halalu. He uses any of these kind of languages. Dinu devarim ein li al sadazu, or ein li'esek ba, or yadim misulekas heimena. In all of these cases, lo amar klum. That's nothing. The me'achar shehi shalo, because if he already owns it, tzarech lichtov. He has to write over a language of a gift. He has to gift it over to the person. He can't simply say, I'm removed. It's impossible to remove himself. And so over here also, how is it possible for the husband to remove himself from an ownership stake that he does have in the property? And the Gemara answered, he wrote this not after he was already zocha. He wrote it while they were in the stage of erisin. That's before he acquired the property. At that point already, when it's the point of Erison, he doesn't have to write a language of a gift, he doesn't have to write a language of matana, he can make the Tanai, as Rav Kahana said, talking about a nachla that comes to a person, mimakom acher, from a different source, she'ena Yerusha savosav min haTorah. Again, it's not a Yerusha from his fathers, it's not a deoraisa Yerusha, and that's why he's able to make a condition in that case. And again, like Rava said, the Gemara then went on to say, like the statement of Rava, which we'll see on the next Amud, masna Allah, again, he's allowed to make a condition, kodem shazacha, before he actually is zocha, before he acquires it. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis.